Hey guys, what's happening? We got all of our hay done, so second cuttings, it's in the books for 24. Today, I'm gonna try to get some equipment washed up here. Got a couple different things I'd like to get washed up. All the tractors could use a good bath, and the skid loaders too, side by sides, ground baler, corn planter, and eventually the feed mixer. But the number one thing on my list that I gotta get cleaned up is the corn planter. We're done with it for the year. We've been done with it for about a month now. I just haven't got around to getting it washed up yet. So it's pretty dirty. It could really use it. So I'll have to get the stuff out in front of it here, and then I can pull it out and we'll get it washed up. I can tuck it back in the shed and be done with it for another year. Before I do that, I'd like to explain what's going on here with the skid loader. About a month ago now, we had a problem with this skid loader where the front wheel, it popped the snap ring off, which allowed the whole axle and everything to pull out of your the chain case there, and there, that sprocket, there's splines where it gets in there. I'll show you here. And then last week with the back one, did the same thing. And there's a piece inside. I have it all tore apart again. Found out what was wrong. It's splines on the axle there. I'll show you what we first thought it was. So if you look in there, your axle sits right in here in the sprocket, and then it goes back through and sits against that piece. Well, this piece here was all smashed. So what we did was stuck a bearing hanger up in there behind there and tacked it fast, and that held up. We thought maybe the weld broke or something on it, but then we got to looking around and we discovered, you can't tell, I'd have to take that snap ring off of there. This here is the snap ring that I was talking about. So on this New Holland skid loader, the Gale skid loader is the same way, but there are skid loaders that are made totally different. You got your axle here that sticks through this housing. So inside here you got your outer bearing, and then you got your inner bearing. Your inner bearing is this bearing right here. So you got a race that pounds down in there. On this side, your bearing sits down, and then you got some shims here, and then there's a groove in here, and these splines on this axle that the snap ring snaps down into, and that holds everything together. What happened was these splines here are starting to get a little bit of a taper to them, so they should be completely flat across, so this snap ring should fit flush with them. But now that they're getting a little bit of taper, and you can see that's not very tight, so whenever you turn or something like that and it's got a lot of stress on this snap ring here, it'll just pop it right off, and that allows your axle to fall out and everything. So that's what was going on. I hope you guys can kind of understand things here a little better. I know sometimes I'm not the best explaining everything, but what we're gonna do is take this part, take a snap ring off, and we'll take this axle down to our neighbor. He has a lathe. He'll put it in the lathe, and he'll be able to turn them down and get them straightened back up. What we'll have to do is add some more shims. So every axle is different when you get a bearing kit. And your actual bearing kit from CNH, they'll send you some shims. There's a couple different sizes, and then you just have to match it up to make it fit tight. This bearing here, we never have no problem with it because it's in oil all the time. But however, the bearing that's down here, your outer bearing, there's a seal there, and eventually this skid loader here's got this housing all chewed up from the bearing going out, and this wear and tear. And this skid loader's got 8,000 hours on it. There's no shame for it. There's no wonder why everything's wearing out here, but it'll eventually pull dirt and stuff in there, and then it'll take your seal out, and your seal allows all that dirt and stuff to go in there to the bearing. And even if there is grease in that bearing, it'll still go out. We just changed one on this skid loader, changed one on the Gale skid loader. They all have their problems eventually, but I think the biggest problem is the bearings are junk. These skid loaders, we're always having bearing problems with them. So tearing one of these apart is nothing for us to have any problem with because we're so used to doing them. So I'll deal with this later. I just wanted to explain what was going on here. I think maybe the front one's actually wore too, so it could potentially pop off at any time. But if this snap ring's not sitting down in there in place, I mean, it's holding both bearings and everything to sit down in there right. So all it would take would just be a little bit of stress from turning or something to pop that snap ring right off. Got the 125 all cleaned up, best of my ability. It looks pretty decent. It's nothing near perfect, but it's a lot better than what it did look like. I need to get some wax. I don't have any wax anymore. I'll have to order more and wax the hood on it and the fenders, and really makes it stand out. But I need to do a review on this tractor. It's been a really good tractor for us so far. Maybe that'll be in my next video. But anyhow, now that this is cleaned up, I gotta get it out of the road, just back it over there and let it dry off. Then I'll get the corn planter out of the shed here. There we have it, the 870 hooked to the corn planter. Never had it hooked up to this one, but 5100, my pap used to plant with the 870, and he also planted with the 2090 there before we got the 5140. But that might have been the 4-row. I'm not sure if he used, I think he might have used the 770 back when they had 770, used that on the 4-row, and then this tractor is used on the 6-row. But wouldn't be so bad planting on flat ground now. There's a good bit of weight here on this planter. Probably push this tractor around on the hills. I wouldn't really trust it on a hill, but flat ground it would make a pretty decent planter tractor, I think. Got her cleaned up, looks pretty decent. Just need to take the water hose and hose all this junk out of these fertilizer boxes. A bunch of dust and stuff in there. I don't want sitting down in there and rusting them things out. The augers aren't in the boxes, it's just these here things that I don't want rusting out.